Welcome to the USC video on making a contour map. Now, there's a number of rules that happen to exist for making any type of contour map. So the first thing is contour lines cannot cross one another. So they can't do that. They can't merge. And they can't split. So I can't have one go into two. All of these are no-goes. The second rule is contour lines should be smooth and curved, not angular. So what this means for us really as 101 students is you will probably end up with something like this. After you're done, you'll go through and smooth it out. You'll retrace things. You might also be someone who kind of does like rapid lines in succession. You'll go through again, make it a nice solid line. Because of this, and the fact that we're going to make mistakes, we should be using pencil. That's our number one thing for making any kind of contour map. We use pencil. That way we can erase it later. The only reason I'm not doing that right here is because it is harder to see pencil than it is to see marker. The third thing, if you are not provided a contour interval, you have to select an appropriate interval. So you shouldn't have too many lines and you shouldn't have too few either. The fourth thing is that contour lines can go off the map, but I want you to take care with that because you don't want to end up making data. You'll see what I mean in a little bit with that. 5, you need to label your contours. That way, anyone who comes up and reads it is able to figure out what value those contour lines have. After that, it's a lot more individualized aspects of this. But the whole point of doing all of this is because we want to make sure that we are plotting spatial data, so things that are normally in like 3 dimensions or over time, stuff like that. We are plotting that over a 2-dimensional map or a 2-dimensional image. That way we are able to visualize some trends. That means that every single one of the points along a contour line should have the exact same value. So if you're mapping out temperature, everything on your line should have the exact same temperature. Beyond that, as far as how do we get values for spots we don't know, we're going to have to interpolate a little bit. And you'll see what I mean by that in a moment. So let's go ahead and actually look at a practice example. So right here, I have a bunch of numbers, and this will end up making an actual contour map at the end. Now, I have not been provided a contour interval here, but I'm seeing quite a wide range. I see my lowest value is 5, and my largest seems to be 59. So that's going to be quite a wide range. I want to make sure that I'm drawing enough lines in here so I can see a trend. So between 5 and 59, ooh, that's quite a large jump. That's like 55-ish points there. Technically, it's 54, but we're going to want a good number of gaps. So I would lean towards about every 10 as mine. Some people might do every 20. To me, that's going to be too few lines on here. We're not going to see a trend. Some people might do every 5. To me, that's going to be way too many lines. This comes with experience. So for your ones that we're looking at, we are going to actually provide you the contour interval. But I walked you through just now how I would determine what I would want as my interval. So I'm going to write down my interval is going to be every 10. I don't have units for this map. It could be temperature, it could be pressure, it could be elevation, which is what we tend to look at here. So I don't have units up here. So now that I have my contour interval, I need a place to start. And what I like to do is I think of what my lowest value is here. Okay? So I have 5 here. That's going to be kind of what I have to keep in mind. I'm going to need a contour between this and something bigger. So I'm thinking I'm going by every 10. So I don't want to start at 5. That would be weird. I'm going to pretend I'm starting at 0 for a moment. and I have no values less than 0. So I don't need to include a 0 contour, but I add 10 to that now. So now I'm at 10. I do have values under 10. I have that 5 right there. So I'm going to need a 10 contour that I draw. I'm going to add 10 to that now. And rather than looking for things below it, I'm going to be looking to see if things are above that. So I added 10 to 10. I get 20. I see, ooh, there's one that's over 20 right there. So that means I have to include a 20 contour. I'm going to add 10 to that contour I just did. I get 30. I'm looking for something above 30. There's a 33. That's above 30. So I'm going to have to do a 30 contour interval. I'm going to hop up here and see 40, 50, and I'm just doing those because those are easy for me to point out. And then once again, I'm adding 10 to that most recent one. So 50 plus 10 is 60. I do not see a value 60 or greater, which means I actually can stop at my 50. So these are the lines I have to draw. I have to draw a 10 contour, a 20, a 30, a 40, and a 50. So that has provided me with which lines I need to draw. I want you on your practice sheet to also draw these same lines. So we're imagining that you had a contour interval of 10 as well. My first step, I am going to pick a side to start with. So I can start with my 10 value, or I can jump all the way up to my 50, but it should be one of my ends. I normally like to start at the lowest one, so I'm going to start with my 10s. What I'm going to do now that I have chosen that, on here in pencil, I would make a mark and circle around any values that are that value exactly. So the reason we do that is if I have a number on here that's that exact value, well, one of my rules is every single point that has that value has to be on that contour. So what that means is my contour has to pass through this 10 right here. So I see that 10 on the left side right in the middle. I don't see any other ones on here that are exactly 10. So now we're going to start doing some of that interpolating. So I need to be able to figure out where I can actually go from my 10. So I'm looking for numbers that 10 is between. So for example, 10 is between 5 and 17. I should expect a 10 somewhere in this area. I would not expect it between 17 and 19 because 10 does not fit between those two. That's really what we're doing. Now, because we're college students and not high school students doing this, one of our expectations is that you are going to be able to place these contours roughly spaced where they would actually be. The way we do this is we assume it's a gradual change from 5 to 17. What I mean by this, if I were to have a graph with 5 being down here and 17 being up here, I could, in theory, get from 5 to 17 without going way up there beyond 17. I could have a weird pattern like this where I keep going up and down. That's not a nice, gradual, steady rate. So we assume a direct linear path between those two. That means that if I'm assuming that, halfway between these two should be roughly around that 11 mark. So I should be a little closer to the 5 than I would be to the 17 on my chart. So let's go ahead and put that back up here. I should be a little closer to my 5 than to my 17, so I'll make a mark of that there. And I'm going to go through and continue doing that. Now, I cannot go up between that 17 and 19, I already said. I also can't go between 19 and 15. I can't go between 15 and 14. I can go between 5 and 14. So that means I'm going to have to pull this down. 10 is a little closer to 14, so I would anticipate coming off to that side. Now that I'm between 5 and 14, I can't go between 14 and 23. I can't go between 16 and 23 either, but I can go between 5 and 16. And I should be a little closer to 5. But really, for all of these, it's such a small difference right now. It's not the end of the world if you're roughly in the middle. So that's all I need in order to actually make my contour. To go above and beyond this now, I would have to do some advanced stuff, and we're not getting that advanced at this level. So in order to finish this contour here, I would clean it up by smoothing it out with my pencil, and then I make sure I label it. Different people label it differently. On my hand-drawn ones, I make sure to label both ends of one of these. That way, no matter where you start, you can figure out what it is. Other people will instead label somewhere inside of it. You'll see some of the IA work that has been done with that instead. All of those are acceptable, but you need a label. No matter what, you need a label on your contour. So now that I've done that line, I'm going to go ahead and cross off my 10, and I'm going to go ahead and move to my 20. So now I'm going to go through and circle any values that I see that are exactly 20. And I'm not seeing that on here. So instead, I'm going to have to find two numbers, one on each side of 20. So I see up here, I have a 19 and a 21. 20 is going to be somewhere in between those. And I actually know it's going to be exactly in between those. So that's going to be where I start my line. Now, I have a choice. I can go up and to the left, or I can go down and to the right and try to continue this. Doesn't really matter here because I'm going to have to go to the other side eventually anyways. So I'm going to choose the shorter one, which is coming up here. I see that there's a 15 and a 21. 20 fits between those, so I'll bring it up. Technically speaking, this should be off to the side closer to 21, but I'm trying to add a little variety in here so that it makes more sense with the other IA diagrams. Now, I can't actually move this anywhere because I have no data up here. So I could either pull this up and end it at the edge of the map, or I can just label it where it is right now. And that's what I'm going to do because I don't want to write over my own writing. I can then continue this down and I see 21 and 15. I should be much closer to the 21 side than to the 15 side. But now I have a problem. I can't keep going up here because 21 and 33, 20 isn't between those. So it has to come back down. And between 33 and 15, it's going to be much closer to that 15 side. I can't go between 15 and 19, so I can't go straight down there. It looks like I'm going to have to come between 33 and 19. I'm going to get closer to the 19 side. I hope you can see how I'm determining where that line ends up going. I'm going to invite you to pause the video now and try to finish the 20 contour on your own for this top diagram. Okay, I'm going to continue from where I left off. I'm going to take this line here, and I'm going to continue down here. It's going to bend around that 19. It's going to continue bending around, and then I'm going to have to weave between this 14 and 23, closer to the 23 side, and then kind of in the middle here, but right by that 23 side, and I label it again. That's going to be my 20 contour. Now, what's awesome about us having this contour now is we are able to treat any point along it as a 20. That's going to help us with making our next one because I see that I don't have a 30 anywhere on here. So that's what I'm going to work on now is my 30s. And I'm going to start just like how I did before, 21 and 33. There's going to be a 30 kind of in the middle there. I'm going to bring it up top because that's going to be a faster path. But now I don't really have a place that I can go in between. But I said before, all of this can count as 20. So that means I'm going between 20s and 33s. I should be able to do that and get closer to the 33 side. And then I can continue doing that down to this 37. Now from here, you should have all of the skills you need in order to be able to finish most of this map. So I want to challenge you, go ahead, pause right now, take some time to figure out where the rest of these are. Okay, I'm going to continue with mine now. I'm going to keep having that 30 go between 37 and 25, a little closer to the 25 side, definitely closer to 25 than 49. It's going to loop back around here. And that's going to be the end of my 30. For 40s, I actually see two values that I could start with. I have 40 up there and 40 down here. And I need to make sure both of those are included. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to follow it through now between 37 and 48. 40 is much closer to 37. Same over here. It's going to get in the middle of 30 and 49 though. Down here, I can't go between 49 and 51. So I'm going to hook around to the left. It's going to pass right through that 40 and I'm going to label it. That's my 40 line. Now 50, I once again have two different spots on here. I'm going to have to make sure I pass through both of those spots. I'm going to start up here at that 50. I'm going to pass on down now. I should be closer to the 48 than the 57. Same between 48 and 59. Should be closer to 49. I'm going to hook out here to 50. But I still have a value between 49 and 51 that's 50. So I can't necessarily just send it there. Some people might split this into its own separate section. That's okay. But I would say it makes more sense to bend it back around like this. So how does yours compare to mine? I will tell you that most people are going to have slight variations of the same thing. So if you want to compare what mine looks like to one of the ones that has quite a lot of lines drawn on it, just because they ended up doing more lines, I'm going to pull it off for a second so you can see what it will look like. Let me overlap it exactly how it's meant to be overlapped. You can see that this IA and I have similar data for the ones we both drew. So we both drew a 20, for example, and that followed similar paths. Some of theirs are a little bit off from what I would recommend. So examples being like this line here doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But for the most part, you can see we have similar trends. So our 30 lines are quite similar to one another. Our 40 lines are similar. So really, no matter who you are having as your IA, we're all going to have slight variations. And in fact, here is what all of the IAs for this current semester put as theirs. And this is all overlapped. So you can see there are some areas, such as over on the left side, where there's much less agreement than, for example, with the 30 line, where there's much more agreement. The more data you have on your map, the easier it is for people to agree on where these contours go. As long as you follow the rules of contouring, you are going to be successful. So let's go ahead and look at a different example now. You are once again going to have a contour interval of 10. So I want you to pause and try to get as far as you can before coming back to this video. I will go ahead and wait for you for a moment so that you can pause. Once you are done, come back and skip ahead. Otherwise, if you get stuck, follow along from this point. So I know my contour interval is 10 again. That means I am going to have to do every 10. I am going to have, I see a value of 3 here. I don't see any values less than 0, so I don't need a 0. So it looks like, once again, I'm going to have a lowest value be 10. And then I build up from there. So I have values 20s, 30s. I have a 40 up here. It looks like 47 is the largest number on mine. So that means I'm going to have to do all of the contours below 47. So I need 10, I need 20, I need 30, and I need 40. Those are the ones I'm going to need. And I'm writing that right along the bottom so I don't forget about it. I'm going to this time start with the higher end because it's going to show us something real quick. But normally I do like to start at the bottom and go to the top. So this time I'm just flipping it to show you that that still works. So 40, I'm going to look for numbers that are above 40 and below 40. So 47 is above, 32 is below. Roughly in the middle of those is where 40 is. I'm going to start there. Now, I'm going to try to find a path around. It does not look like I can do much between 32 and 29, so I can't really jump between those, but I can go between 29 and 47, but much closer to the 47 side. Between 31 and 47, I'm going to be closer to the 47 side. Between 36 and 47, I'm going to be closer. Well, no, I'm actually going to be kind of in the middle of those. This is why you use pencil instead of marker like I'm doing. Now, I know for a fact I can't escape out this way because I have some really low numbers here. So it looks like I'm probably going to have to bend back up, but we'll come around to the other side and see where we can go from here. So from here, I can't go up. I can't cut across. I just kind of have an open space. So I'm going to be cautious. I'm going to make a little loop here, and I'm going to label that. That's okay to have a loop that stays entirely on your page. In fact, contours are kind of like nesting dolls. They sit one in front or inside of another. So this is more than okay. And it'll actually help us figure out where other contours go now. So I've done my 40 line. I'm going to now, it would help if I labeled that correctly. There's my 40 line. I'm going to go down one step to my 30 line. So in between 40 and 31, that doesn't work for it, but I do know 30 is between 29 and 40. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to take it down here between 29 and 31. There will be 30. I'm going to keep going up with this because I can see it goes between these two values. It definitely goes between those two. It comes down a little. And now I still have this huge gap here, but I know somewhere between 9 and 47, or sorry, 9 and 40, I have 30, and it's going to be much closer to that 40 side. So I can pull it down here. It can't pass between 40 and 36, so instead it's going to pass between these two over on this side. Now, some of your IAs might have different thoughts about what I have done so far. Some of them are likely to have pulled the 40 off to the bottom. We don't have much data over here, which is why I'm not doing that. But it is possible that that could be the case. So we could have values higher in the middle and we just don't know it. This is why having more data is so important. So I've done my 30, but I also have values up here that are above 30. So that means I'm actually going to have two different parts to my 30 contour. So I'm on this side going to pick another spot. So 31 and 26, 30 is between those. I'm choosing that because it's kind of at the edge. And it looks like if I follow through, I'm going to end up having my 30 contour like that. So now it looks like I have my 30 contours done. Now I'm going to move down to my 20s. I see a 20 and an 8 or 21 and an 18 up here, so I'm going to start with my 20s there. It looks like I kind of have a weird scenario going on. So I have values on this side that are going to be above 20, but I also have values on this side that are going to be above 20. So what I'm kind of thinking right now is I might once again have a split. So I'm doing this in marker, as I've said. I would recommend doing this in pencil because you can try things out a little bit. I'm going to assume, for my sake, that this is going to actually be a 20 line. Again, I should probably have that be closer to the 21, but each of us will be a little different with these. But we're all following the same rules. And since we're all following the same rules, we should get very similar contours, even if they're a little different. So that actually kind of worked out for me on this side. Let's do the same over here now for that 20. It's kind of in the middle of those, but definitely closer to the 16. So I'd actually make it down here. I can come to the edge and write my contour interval. I'm going to follow this along. 29 has to be on this side. I'm going to pass on the 19 in between those. That would be my 20 contour. And I'm just looking through right now and making sure I didn't miss one. And from the looks of it, I'm pretty good. So now I'll move on to my 10s. And keep in mind, each of these times I'm looking through first. Can I find a value that's exactly this number? And on this map, just none of them are on my contour interval. That's okay. It just means that we have to do a little more work. So 10 cannot go between these values up here. Oh, there's a good spot. Between 9 and 12, 10 is closer to that 9. So now I'm going to come on down here, kind of in the middle over here. On this side, here, I'll label it in the middle like some of your IAs will. And it'll come off like that. So as long as you are labeling them, it's much less important where you label it than the fact that you do label it. I just default normally to the side because I want an easy place for myself to find that number later. But if you're able to write the number kind of big, it really doesn't matter. Now, if I were turning this in, I would go through and clean it up. I would erase things like this little mark over here, or my mistake I made over at that 40 contour. But let's again compare what mine looks like to what your IA's looks like. I will tell you this one is much messier for all of us. So where a lot of IAs differ from me is going to be what we do down here. A lot of them want to pull it off to the edge. Again, that's more than okay. A lot of them also want to loop the 20 around and have just 120. That's also more than okay. It all depends on what data you have. You can also see some IA went up over here. I wouldn't do that just because I don't have data on this side to support it, but that's not necessarily wrong. That could happen. So that's looking at how it compares to all IAs. If I instead just pick one IA at random, you can again see we have some areas. It would help if I match this up a little better so they line up a bit. You can see there are going to be some areas on here where we are in quite a lot of agreement. So that's going to be things like this 10 and quite a lot of disagreement. That's what we have going on over here. That can happen. We are novices at this right now at the 101 level. Many of us have not done this before. It's okay to make mistakes. Your big goal is just making sure you are following the rules that are listed out for contours. Some of the other things that you can do with contours, if we look at mine, for example, we are actually able to interpret some things. Let's pretend this is about the elevation rather than temperature or anything. If I have lines that are close together, that means that I am rapidly changing. So if it's elevation, it's a steep gradient. If this is temperature, I have quite a big difference here. So I'd have hot temperature and cold temperatures very close to each other. If they're quite spread out instead, it's a very gradual change. So you would barely notice a change of temperature as you move across these. You definitely would over here where they're close together. It would be an easy walk along here where they're spread out. It would be very difficult where they're close together. If there are streams present on a map, they are going to intersect our contour lines. So I'm going to have a stream in I guess I should do a stream in blue because that would make the most sense. There's my stream. As it cuts into the topography, it's going to actually bend our contours into V's. So these are where I'm meaning by V's. It's going to point like this. These V's point upstream. So upstream in this case is in this direction. Well, that means water flows opposite it. So that is a tool that you can use when it comes to making a contour map as far as streams. Reading a contour map is going to be much more hands-on and involved, but you're really looking at the values from those contour lines and trying to estimate if a point is between those, what value is it? Kind of the process we did in reverse earlier, where we tried to estimate where to put a contour line between two values. Now we're trying to figure out what the value is between two. Or if it's on a point, or sorry, on a line, what's that actual value at that spot? So you, at this point, have the skills you will need to not only read a contour map, but also to make your own. Get a lot of practice, and I'm excited to have your IAs work with you on this week.